What is this? Sir, that's my military ID. Army Special Operations. Anyone can buy camo. You can verify. Hands behind your back.
The cuffs clicked. At 6:42 a.m. Savannah Airport, a black man in Army service uniform was slammed face first onto the terminal floor. Not a suspect. Master Sergeant Darius Cole, 43 years old, 17 years, serving a country that just demanded he prove he belonged. The officer who put him there had 14 years with airport police, 7 formal complaints about racial profiling, and 0 consequences. Until that morning. 12 minutes later, phones inside the Pentagon started ringing, and Army CID was being dispatched to Savannah. A chain of command was about to collapse under the weight of what those 2 officers had done on camera. Comment where you're watching from, because what happens in the next 12 minutes proves that cameras don't lie, and neither does the United States Army. Officer Derek Landry was 41 years old with 14 years at Savannah Airport Police. Among some coworkers, he had a reputation as old school, a label that meant short patience, heavy hands, and assumptions about who belonged where. 7 formal complaints sat in his personnel file, each one alleging he targeted black travelers for extra screening and aggressive questioning without probable cause. Not one had resulted in meaningful discipline. A few junior officers had quietly requested transfers after working shifts with him, saying he escalated too quickly and listened too slowly. Until now. That morning, Landry stood near the security checkpoint with coffee in one hand and his radio on his shoulder, watching the early rush move through the concourse. Families heading to vacations, business travelers checking phones, airline crews pulling roller bags, and a handful of service members in uniform connecting to their next duty stations. His partner, Officer Brian Hayes, 34 years old, with 6 years on the job, stayed a step behind him the way he always did. Hayes rarely challenged Landry's decisions. Landry's eyes locked on one traveler in particular. Master Sergeant Darius Cole, 43, walked through the terminal in Army service uniform, no unit patches visible, just the standard U.S. Army insignia that operational security required for special operations personnel traveling in public. His posture carried the discipline of 17 years in the military, the ribbons on his chest showing deployments most people couldn't imagine. He was traveling on official orders from Fort Bragg to Tampa for a classified briefing, carrying a small duffel and a documents pouch marked with government security tape. He had chosen to remain in uniform because he was moving directly between Army installations on official business, and he was thinking about his 80-year-old son waiting for him to come home after this trip. Landry saw only skin color. As Cole passed the checkpoint, Landry shifted his stance. "Hey, you in the uniform, stop right there." Cole stopped, turned and faced him with calm discipline. "Yes, sir. If you were standing there in uniform after 17 years of service, would you expect this treatment? Where are you coming from?" "Fort Bragg, sir, connecting through to Tampa." "You got orders on you." Cole reaches slowly toward his inside pocket, making the movement deliberate and visible. "I have my military ID and travel orders, yes, sir." "Keep your hands where I can see them." Hayes moved to Cole's right side, blocking his path forward. "Just do what he says," Hayes added quietly. Cole kept both hands visible at chest level. "I'm complying." His training took over. Landry leaned in closer, lowering his voice. "A lot of people wear uniforms they didn't earn, and you fit a description we've been given." Cole's jaw tightened slightly, but his tone stayed controlled. "What description is that, sir?" "Don't play games. Guys like you think a uniform gets you special treatment." The phrase hung in the air between them, caught on both body cameras and preserved for what would come later. Cole's eyes narrowed, but his voice remained steady. "I'm a master sergeant in the United States Army, sir. You can verify that with my common access card." Landry shook his head. "We'll verify whatever we need to verify. Turn around." "For what reason?" "Because I said so." Hayes reached for Cole's arm. "Turn around, sir." Cole complied, placing his hands behind his back with his palms open. "I'm not resisting." A few travelers slowed their pace watching, A woman with a stroller stopped completely. 3 meters away, a retired Marine colonel in a ball cap lifted his phone and started recording. He recognized the bearing immediately. The ribbons on Cole's chest told a story the colonel understood without explanation. Multiple deployments combat service. The kind of experience you couldn't fake at a surplus store. A TSA supervisor working the nearby checkpoint heard every word through her headset. Her hand moved toward her radio. An airline pilot who had just cleared security slowed his walk, his own military experience telling him this stop had nothing to do with security. His phone came out. Cameras were multiplying. Landry pulled Cole's wrist higher than necessary. "You're tense." "I'm standing still, sir," Cole replied. Landry leaned closer to Hayes. "Watch him close. These guys snap when you push them." Cole heard it clearly. "That's not accurate, sir." Landry's voice rose. "Don't tell me what's accurate. You don't look like a master sergeant, and you don't look like you belong in that uniform." Cole turned his head slightly. "You don't get to decide that, officer." The body cam caught everything. Airport Police Sergeant Marcus Walker approached from the main concourse, drawn by the raised voices and the crowd that was starting to form. "What's going on here?" Landry answered before Cole could speak. "Possible stolen valor, Sarge. Subject is being evasive and aggressive." Cole met Walker's eyes directly. "Sergeant, I am an active-duty Army Special Operations soldier traveling on official orders. I have identification and travel documents." I answered every question. "I have not resisted and I have not been aggressive." Walker looked from the handcuffs to the Army service uniform to Landry's tense grip on Cole's arm. He paused. "Derek, did you run his ID through the system?" Landry hesitated for half a second. "We're handling it, Sarge." Walker nodded slowly. Then he stepped back. He didn't ask to see the ID. He didn't ask Cole a single question. He just stepped back and let it continue. The chance was gone. The Marine colonel lowered his phone, slightly disbelief crossing his face. The TSSA supervisor keyed her radio quietly. The pilot kept filming. Landry reached into Cole's jacket and pulled out the common access card and the folded travel orders. The ID showed Cole's photo, his rank, his social security number, and the Department of Defense seal. The travel orders had a header reading, "Official Military Travel, U.S. Army Special Operations Command," with classification markings. Landry barely glanced at them. Anyone can print fake orders off the internet. We see this all the time at surplus stores. Cole's voice stayed level. "Sir, that's a common access card with an embedded security chip that's verified through DoD systems. You can run it through your checkpoint scanners right now." Landry shook his head. "We'll verify it our way." He shoved the ID and orders back into Cole's jacket. "You're being detained for disorderly conduct and failure to comply." "I have complied with every command you have given me, sir." "We'll sort that out." As they started toward the side corridor, the Marine colonel spoke up. "Officer, that's a real uniform with real ribbons. You don't need to be doing this." Landry shot him a look. "Sir, step back and mind your business." The colonel didn't lower his phone. "I'm minding my business. That soldier is my business. If you've seen supervisors back bad cops instead of stopping them, hit like right now. Let's count how many of us recognize this pattern." Sergeant Walker had walked away. Cole stood in the middle of Concourse B with his hands still behind his back. His posture remained disciplined despite the violation of being detained without cause. Landry's grip on his arm tightened with the kind of pressure meant to assert dominance rather than control. "You're being detained. Let's go." Cole didn't move immediately. His training told him to understand the situation fully before taking action. "Sir, I need to understand the specific charge I'm being detained for." Landry's hand drove harder into Cole's upper back. The sudden force was more about anger than the procedure. "Get down, now!" "I'm not resisting, sir." Landry shoved. Cole's balance broke. Hayes moved in simultaneously, hooking Cole's left arm and pulling downward in a coordinated movement that spoke to training even if the justification was absent. The momentum carried all three men forward in a controlled fall. Cole's knees hit the polished tile first. The impact was sharp. Then his shoulder, then his face. The sound echoed across the concourse, a crack of bone against hard surface that made several bystanders gasp audibly. That was the point of no return. For a man who had survived firefights in 3 combat zones, who had called in close air support under enemy fire, who had led teams through situations where one wrong move meant death being forced face down and on an airport floor by officers who saw his skin color before his service record was a humiliation that cut deeper than any combat wound. Witnesses would remember that sound. A woman near the gate covered her mouth. The Marine colonel's phone stayed up, capturing every second. "Stop moving!" Landry yelled, planting his knee between Cole's shoulder blades with enough weight to make breathing difficult. Cole's cheek pressed flat against the cold floor, his vision filled with polished tile and the legs of people stopping to watch. "I am not moving," he said through clenched teeth. Every word required effort against the pressure on his back. "You're hurting me." Landry forced Cole's wrists together behind his back, wrenching the shoulders at an angle that sent pain shooting down both arms. The handcuffs snapped closed with a metallic click. "You should have thought about that before you got mouthy." Hayes looked around at the gathering crowd. His body language showed the first signs of uncertainty. "Clear out. Nothing to see here." Nobody moved. The Marine colonel spoke up, his voice loud enough to carry across the terminal. "That's Army Special Operations with combat ribbons. You don't need to be doing this." Landry shot him a look filled with irritation. "Sir, mind your business." Cole lay perfectly still on the terminal floor. His breathing stayed controlled despite the knee in his back. He was aware of the cameras recording from multiple angles, aware of the phones in the hands of witnesses, aware of the body cam blinking red with evidence. The damage had been done in front of everyone. The Marine colonel didn't lower his phone. "A soldier being put on the ground for no reason is my business." No one backed down. Cole lay perfectly still on the terminal floor. His breathing stayed controlled despite the knee in his back. He stared at the polished tile beneath his face, aware of the cameras recording from multiple angles, aware of the phones in witnesses' hands, aware of the body cam blinking red. "Stand him up," Hayes said quietly. Landry hauled Cole to his feet by the handcuffs, yanking upward with force that torqued both shoulders. Cole's face remained expressionless. He gave the cameras only discipline and control. A uniformed airport sergeant appeared through the crowd. Sergeant Renee Carver was a 15-year veteran with enough experience to recognize a bad stop when she saw one. "What's going on here?" Landry answered before Cole could speak. "Possible stolen valor, Sarge." Subject became aggressive when questioned. Cole met Carver's eyes directly. "Sergeant, I am an active-duty Army Special Operations soldier traveling on official orders from Fort Bragg to Tampa. I have identification and travel documents. I answered every question. I did not resist." Carver looked from the handcuffs to the Army service uniform that was now scuffed and dirty. Then she looked at Landry's face, which showed defensiveness. "Let me see his identification." Landry reached into Cole's jacket and pulled out the common access card and travel orders. Carver looked at the ID first. The photo matched perfectly. She unfolded the travel orders next. Her eyes scanned the header. "Official military travel, U.S. Army Special Operations Command." The shift was immediate. "Master Sergeant, your active duty, Special Operations Command." She turned back to Landry. "Why is he in handcuffs?" Chief Douglas Brennan arrived, moving with purposeful stride. He was in his early 50s, calm in the way that came from seeing too many officers make stupid decisions. He took in the scene, the crowd of witnesses, the phones recording the Army service uniform on a man who was clearly not happy. "What happened here?" Carver spoke first. "Sir, Officers Landry and Hayes detained Master Sergeant Darius Cole of Army Special Operations Command. Force was used to bring him to the ground. The Master Sergeant was compliant throughout. His identification and travel orders are valid. Brennan looked at Cole. Master Sergeant, is that accurate? Yes, sir. Brennan turned to Landry. Why was he detained? Possible stolen valor, Chief. He was argumentative. Cole's voice stayed steady. Sir, I answered every question. I provided my military ID and travel orders. I asked why I was being stopped. That's when Officer Landry used force. Brennan picked up the travel orders. His eyes went to the header USASOC. His expression tightened immediately. Travis Bryant, you're both pulled from the floor. Hand in your radios. Uncuff him, now. Landry unlocked the handcuffs with rough, resentful movements. Cole flexed his hands slowly. Red marks were forming on both wrists. The damage was already done. Brennan looked at Cole again. Master Sergeant, you said Special Operations Command. Yes, sir. First SFO Delta. Brennan's expression tightened further. Delta Force operators held some of the highest security clearances in the military. 2 airport officers had just put one face down on a terminal floor in front of witnesses and cameras. Then this is going to reach people at levels who don't take kindly to their personnel being handled this way, Brennan said quietly. Too late to undo what cameras caught. Somewhere in the terminal, a phone was being pulled out to dial Fort Bragg. When that call connected to Army CID, the incident would stop being an airport police problem and become a federal case. The camera caught everything. Chief Douglas Brennan walked fast down the corridor with his phone already in his hand. His mind was calculating how badly this could go. He dialed the Army CID duty officer at Fort Bragg, not NCAS, because this was Army jurisdiction. This is Chief Brennan, Savannah Airport Police. We have an incident involving an active duty special operations soldier. Force was used during detention. The soldier was compliant. Everything's on camera. The duty officer's voice shifted immediately. Stand by for escalation. Federal jurisdiction activated. 4 hours later, a black SUV pulled up to the operations entrance. 3 men stepped out wearing civilian clothes with credentials on lanyards, Army CID badges, Department of Justice identification. Special Agent Thomas Rivera from CONID, Fort Bragg, led the team. We need all body camera footage, all security camera footage, all witness statements, and the service records of both involved officers. Chief Brennan had everything ready. Full cooperation, no delays. The scope had expanded beyond local control. A technician uploaded files to secure servers while the federal team watched. Body camera footage from Landry and Hayes. Security camera footage from 3 angles. Civilian phone recordings already posted to social media. As the evidence mounted, something else surfaced. 7 prior complaints against Officer Derek Landry over 3 years, all involving stops of black travelers, all dismissed as judgment calls. No room for interpretation. In a small conference room, investigators played Landry's body camera footage on a monitor. The audio was clear and undeniable. Guys like you think a uniform gets you special treatment. The words came through with perfect clarity. So did the comment about Cole not looking like a master sergeant. So did the assumption that his credentials were fake before verification. An internal affairs investigator paused the video at impact. That's textbook excessive force. That language is going to be a major problem when this goes federal. The proof was locked in. By late afternoon, a secure briefing convened at Fort Bragg involving CID, the staff judge advocate, and representatives from U.S. Army Special Operations Command. A still image from Landry's body camera displayed on screen. Cole's face hitting the tile, Landry's knee planted between his shoulder blades. A senior legal officer asked the question, "What's the soldier's unit in clearance level?" A staff attorney read from the report, "First SFO Delta, TS/SCI clearance, 17 years active duty, multiple combat deployments, Bronze Star with V device." The senior officer's expression tightened. Then this goes to the highest levels. Within the hour, a call came from the Pentagon to Chief Brennan's office. The voice carried the weight of institutional authority that doesn't need volume to be understood. Chief Brennan, you don't put hands on our people. Not ever. Especially not someone with that clearance level and that service record. We're treating this as assault on military personnel and potential civil rights violation. The institution had spoken. In a quieter office, Cole gave his statement to S.A. Rivera through a secure line. His voice was steady, precise, without emotion. He recounted the stops systematically, the questions asked, the refusal to accept his common access card, the assumption his credentials were fraudulent, the force used despite his compliance. At any point, did you physically resist? Rivera asked. No, sir. I asked why I was being stopped, which is my right. I provided my military ID and travel orders when requested. I placed my hands behind my back when ordered. I didn't resist when force was used. I complied with every instruction. Rivera asked directly, did either officer use language that you believe was motivated by racial bias? Yes, sir. Officer Landry stated that guys like you think uniforms provide special treatment. He stated I didn't look like a master sergeant. Both statements are on his body camera. Cole paused, then added quietly, I didn't resist because I know how a black man in cuffs gets labeled regardless of circumstances. I did everything by the book, so there would be no question about my conduct when cameras were reviewed. His training held. By evening, officers Derek Landry and Brian Hayes were placed on administrative leave. They turned in their sidearms credentials and radios. An internal affairs captain informed them that the state's Peace Officer Standards and Training Commission had been notified and would review their certification status. For what? Landry's voice carried defensive anger. We detained a suspicious individual. Your job doesn't include putting people on the ground without cause. The captain's voice was flat. Turn in everything and follow me. Careers were ending. That evening, Landry sat in his living room watching the local news. The story led the broadcast. Army Special Operations soldier detained and forced to the ground at Savannah Airport. Federal investigators now involved. The footage showed Cole in his Army service uniform being escorted by Chief Brennan. The chyron read, decorated soldier assaulted by airport police. For the first time since the stop began that morning, Landry understood what he had done. He hadn't just made a bad call. He had put hands on a Delta operator in front of cameras with 7 prior complaints already in his file, using language that prosecutors could prove showed racial bias. The evidence was preserved. The witnesses had given statements. The cameras caught everything. Officer Landry had 7 complaints over 3 years, all dismissed. 0 consequences. Then he touched a Delta operator on camera, and the Pentagon made 1 phone call. Federal investigators arrived within 4 hours. Was the Pentagon's response appropriate, or should accountability have come sooner when the pattern was already clear? Comment your thoughts below. 1 month later, the outcomes became public through official channels and media reports that detailed every step of the accountability process. Officer Derek Landry was terminated from the Savannah Airport Police Department for gross misconduct, excessive use of force, racially motivated detention, and falsifying elements of his incident report. His Georgia Peace Officer Standards and Training certification was revoked by the state board after a hearing that reviewed the complete body camera footage and witness statements. He was permanently barred from working in any law enforcement capacity in the state of Georgia. Officer Brian Hayes was terminated for failure to intervene when his partner violated a citizen's constitutional rights. His post-certification was suspended indefinitely pending review that would likely result in permanent revocation. His career ended not with criminal charges, but with administrative findings that no department would overlook. Sergeant Marcus Walker, the supervisor who had walked away instead of stopping an obviously unlawful detention, was forced into early retirement after an internal review determined he had failed in his duty to supervise and correct officer misconduct. The consequences rippled outward. The Savannah Airport Police Department entered into a consent decree with the Department of Justice that mandated comprehensive reforms, mandatory training on constitutional rights, independent oversight of body camera footage, creation of an early warning system to identify officers with patterns of complaints, and required supervisor presence for any investigative stop lasting more than 5 minutes. The kind of oversight that Landry had operated without for 14 years. Civil litigation followed with precision. Master Sergeant Darius Cole filed a federal civil rights lawsuit under 42 U.S. Section 1983 against the city of Savannah, the airport authority, Derek Landry and Brian Hayes. The complaint alleged unlawful detention, excessive force violation of Fourth Amendment rights, racially motivated selective enforcement, and intentional infliction of emotional distress on an active duty service member. The evidence was overwhelming. Body camera footage from both officers showing the entire encounter. Airport security camera footage from 3 angles. Witness statements from the retired Marine colonel, the TSA supervisor, and 6 other civilians. Audio analysis showing the exact words used. Medical documentation of Cole's injuries. Army records establishing Cole's 17 years of exemplary service, his security clearance level, and his assigned duties that made him exactly who he claimed to be. The city's initial settlement offer was $50,000, an amount so insulting that Cole's attorney laughed during the negotiation call. Your officers handcuffed a Delta Force operator in uniform on camera while he cited the Fourth Amendment. Try again. The city came back with $200,000. Still inadequate. The case went to trial 14 months after the incident in a federal courtroom that was packed every day with veterans wearing their uniforms, civil rights advocates carrying signs in media outlets, covering every moment of testimony. The jury watched everything unfold. They watched Landry approach Cole without justification. They watched Cole comply with every instruction while clearly stating his rights. They watched the shove, the impact, the knee in the back. They heard "guys like you" in crystal clear audio. They saw the red marks on Cole's wrists and the swelling on his face. When the footage ended after 40 minutes, 3 jurors were visibly angry and 2 were crying.